Uh, Happy Saturday. It's NutBallCop again. I want to cover a couple of things in the absolutely insane in the membrane, insane in the brain news cycle. Um, every day I wake up lately, it just seems to be getting more nutty. I mean, nuttier and nuttier and nuttier and nuttier. Um, every morning you open up the news on the internet. Just a little fun side note. I'm actually sitting in my home theater. That's the cabinet I designed and my carpenter neighbor made for me. That's actually full with Blu-rays and DVD. I don't know how many I have now. I have so many. And on top of the movie cabinet is an actual historical artifact, antique, whatever you want to call it, from early Hollywood. That is a 1920s Thompson of Hollywood plate camera. Those were the set cameras before 35 millimeter, because a 35 millimeter has the same ratio as the old film stock. So that's how you did continuity and film tests and stuff, is you did it with plate cameras than 35 millimeter cameras later on in Hollywood history. So I'm a huge movie buff. If you see me on Blue Skies, I'm often talking about movies. Absolutely love movies. um, Last movie I watched was the rewatch of Kelly's Heroes. And the no, the Dirty Dozen. I watched Kelly's Heroes last week, and then I watched the Dirty Dozen last weekend. So I rewatched the Dirty Dozen. Absolutely marvelous cast, marvelous story. Lee Marvin, Charles Bronson, James Brown. Just a incredibly good classic movie with a great story. So let's get on to the news here. We got Carl, Judy, and Stephen. Thank you very much for joining me now. So the first thing I want to talk about is the $100,000 HB1 visa ransom that has just been demanded way outside the president's authority. I actually looked this up, and there are fees for visas that companies have to pay. I already knew this, but I didn't remember the list. I'm a veteran of several startup companies in Silicon Valley. I've been working in technology in the Valley for over 25 years now. I've worked academia, startups, universities, consulting. I worked for a huge tech company for 5 years, one of the biggest in the business in the security and data space. Uh, I'm a subject matter expert on data engineering, all the way up to billion scale. Um, so I know the tech business fairly well. I've been at this for quite a while now. The $100,000 H-1 visas. Let me just tell you plainly what that is as a policy right out of the gate. It is a system to punish any competition to the tech oligarchs who have backed Dear Leader Porn Star Humber. So Zuckerberg, Ellison, Musk, they were immediately exempted from this policy. Okay, they want the big tech companies who are not just funding the campaign, the inauguration, the bullshit, the bribes of Dear Leader's regime, but they're also using their platform to spread misinformation, disinformation, and propaganda on behalf of the nationalist regime. Okay. So they were immediately exempted from this $100,000 policy, because this would have cost like Facebook or Oracle. This would have costed them tens of millions or maybe even hundreds of millions nationwide to pay $100,000 fee on each one of their H-1B visa holders. Okay. And the policy has gone off the rail right out of the start. Every single tech company, bank, uh, 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 manufacturer have told all their. What about the argument that it incentivizes the hiring of Americans with equivalent skills? I have that on my list, Stephen. Just give me a moment and I will talk about that. Good point. And I will definitely address that. Okay. Um, they're eliminating the competition for the big guys. Okay. There is no startup company who's going to go to their startup funder, their A or B round funder, and tell them they need $100,000 per position in administrative markup fees. The, 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 Andreessen Horowitz or any who are we funded by in one of my startups? Sand Hill Road, the big guy on Sand Hill Road. I'm drawing a blank. Greylock. Um, they're not going to pay these fees. Okay. They're not going to allow you to spend money on those fees. Okay. So you're just not going to get it. Now, Stephen asks, what about the incentives to bring American labor back in? That's not what's going to happen. I know this for a fact. I trained my marketing engineering and market producting team in Poland, and then they laid us all off in San Francisco and San Jose and moved all the jobs to Poland and Costa Rica. So this whole argument of incentives to domesticate um, labor is false. Okay. For years now, they have been purposely offshoring it. We build it locally because we have, you know, Americans with equivalent skills. You're right, Stephen. You're absolutely right. There's a bunch of us with equivalent skills, but I'm an older worker. I have 25 years experience. Okay. I actually know what I'm fucking doing. And they want to hire a kid fresh out of college for a third of my total compensation in Costa Rica or Poland or Estonia. Okay. This whole thing where they say, oh, the tech jobs are just going to be hired locally. No. In the majority of cases, they're going to be hired in those places I just mentioned. Okay. And I have firsthand experience with it. Our team, our greater marketing division in San Francisco, trained these foreign teams, which we thought were simply just expanding our business in Latin America and in EMA, Europe, the Middle East, and near Asia. No, the new CEO and the chairman of the board had a completely different plan. Fire us all locally and replace us with cheap and foreign labor. Okay, so I honestly don't think that any of the incentive talk is a real true thing. Because the reality in the Valley for at least the last 7 years is the complete opposite. Build your business locally, export the labor as soon as possible, save money, so the CEO and the chairman of the board can get a bigger bonus check. And that's exactly what happened at my company. I got tossed because of that plus ageism. They just don't want to pay a senior worker with decades of experience at my level. I knew I was an expensive hire. Okay. I negotiated for my own salary. I knew how expensive I was. Okay. But if you're living in the Silicon Valley, you need to make that kind of money as a dad and a head of household, or you're going to be poor. Okay. So it's a catch 22. I need to ask for the salary that is expensive to the company, or I can't afford to live here, knowing that eventually they're just going to export my job overseas anyways. And that's exactly what they did to me. And shit, 120 other people. Okay. So I hope that answers your question, Stephen. What this really does in the real world is completely blow away startups, completely blow away academia and national research. Okay. I used to work at a national lab. Okay. As a lead in business operations compute. Okay. Compute and storage. I ran a global application farm, for example. You could log into a desktop on our application farm and it would transmit over TCP anywhere in the world, a Windows desktop to any other operating system in the world through a native client or a Java app. Okay, so you could be literally on a Solaris or a DEC mini computer, call up a Java app, and then run a Windows desktop or your Outlook email, because that was the only secure email. The send mail was totally insecure. We had to get rid of it. So, very familiar how national labs go. And I remember how many people who were there on foreign visas. The Department of Energy, I used to work for the Department of Energy, is no way going to allow $100,000 a role. That's not even in the realm of reality. So you're going to wipe out startups, academia, and research. And then do you really think Sutter Health Group is going to pay $100,000 per nurse they import into the country? Because a lot of your medical staffing and labor is foreign-born RNs. Do you really think that Sutter or one of these for-profit health groups is going to start shelling out $100,000 a head for jobs? No, they're just going to increase the nursing staffing shortages. Okay, they're just going to make cuts. There's not going to be a replacement for labor in healthcare. Okay, unless they get their rare, which is only a fraction of the market now, their rare American-born and American-trained RN. They're either just not going to pay the fee, or they're just going to cut the staff. Okay, or they're going to hire non-nurses more and more and more. I was just in the hospital. I can't believe how many non-nurses work on the floor now. And there's still a nursing shortage and there's service shortage. Man, you're pounding that thing at 1 a.m. because your painkiller ran out and you just had complex 8-hour surgery. And I'm begging for help. And half an hour before a nurse showed up. Okay. Healthcare is going to be waylaid by this policy. Um, and what this amounts to, when you add it to the seizures of Intel, AMD, and NVIDIA, this is straight out of the communist playbook. And I'm not just throwing stones or being hyperbolic here. This is factual communism. This is the East German Stasi. Okay? The East German Stasi seized control of the chip industry in the 80s. I've told that story before. Okay? And they screwed up everything about the industry. Okay? If you want state control of corporations, you're going to have failing corporations. Okay. And I'm not arguing against the public privates that work in our country or Australia or wherever. But when you literally start having government take control of companies, decide what their businesses are, and set their directions, and the shareholders aren't making that decision. Because in the end, yeah, your day-to-day is made by the CEO and the chairman of the board. Okay. Your long-term decision making is graded by your shareholders. Okay. As a guy who had a massive tranche, set of tranches in a major tech company and watched it and understood it, every time we started to slip, I saw the effect on our stock price. Okay. If this survives the courts, and now my fear is it's going to, they literally have the Supreme Court in their back pockets. Okay. When they hired Gorish, Kavanaugh, and Comey Barrett, they literally handed them a memo. You will approve our policies on A, B, C, D, starting with abortion, then going after queer folks, then going after interracial marriage, then going after regulation. There was a checklist. You agree to this checklist, we'll elevate you to the power of the Supreme Court. I wrote in an essay, Dobbs was not decided in the Supreme Court. It was decided in a meeting room at the Heritage Foundation or at a conference room at the fucking Hilton. The last place it could have been decided was SOTUS. Okay. This is all a setup, a long-term setup. Okay. They wrote it down to you. I wrote an essay in August 2023 about Project 2025 and broke it down to you left and right. Told you this is the culmination of 40 years since Lee Atwater and Reagan. This crap started in the 78 midterms, and it's been going downhill since Reagan took over in 81. Okay. Corporatist Democrats did nothing to slow the downfall of America. Nothing. Okay. In fact, they sided with corporate socialism. They sided with what became the ultimate corruption under the GOP so many times, they're culpable too. Okay. So the H-1B visa won't benefit me. No one's offering me a job, especially at my salary requirements, because of a stupid policy of $100,000 on a head on an H-1B. It's going to be a great boom for Eastern Europe, a great boom for Latin America and the Caribbean, because Puerto Rico is also a destination of tech companies now. It won't do shit for us in Silicon Valley. The depths of the corruption, let's go on to the next topic. The depths of the corruption of this administration, I was already gobstopped a long time ago. The story broke today, multiple outlets, and I read each one, every word of every article I found on this today. Read about 6 today. The FBI did a sting, common thing. We did them in CID too in the Army. Okay, that's how we found out the weapons traffickers in West Germany. Okay. You set up the guy to do a bribe take or a buy bust, whatever you're doing. Well, they got Holland in a room with undercover FBI agents, and Tom Holland, the leader of ICE, took $50,000 in bribes in an undercover sting. And then Trump told Bundy to bury the case, and the case is gone. We're talking Spiro Agnew level criminality in office. You know, Spiro Agnew was taking briefcases full of money at the Naval Observatory as vice president. Okay. Holland's doing the same thing. Okay. At least we through a civil agreement or a non-prosecution agreement, we got fucking Spiro Agnew out of office. The most corrupt politician probably in the White House of all time, or in a White House administration of all time. Okay. This guy was so dirty. Okay. Until now. Now this is a completely new era of mafioso politics. Okay. How do you watch one of your appointees take a bribe on camera? There's video. And then go, not a problem. But there's a history here with the Trump regime. Dear leaders, appointees have all been thieves. Go back to the State Department guy stealing the Japanese whiskey, the $4,000 bottle of whiskey. The videos of people after the first term walking out of the White House with things in their hands that that doesn't look like a banker's box with your personal files. That looks like a bust you took out of a room in the White House. You realize that the White House is a national archive, a national historic place, and kind of a museum. None of that is yours. Okay. But since dear leader porn star Humper is such a narcissistic mental case, um, we need to teach. We need you to teach history to high school kids. Thank you, Stephen. Yeah, I love history. I've led a lot of, but like, let me tell you where I got hooked on history is 1984 in West Germany. I'm there in the 80s, mid 80s, having a blast. I mean, West Germany was the wild, wild west. It was awesome. And this was when I was still in just a regular unit, just doing patrol and headquarters security and stuff like way before my undercover days. Um, and I was just sitting around and I had a bunch of older guys in my unit. And I'm like, what the fuck are we still doing here in Western Europe? I mean, World War II was 40 years ago. What the hell are we doing here now? And so people started throwing books at me. And we had like a barracks library. So I started reading about World War II and World War I. And I was like, wow, that's why we're still here. And I started reading about the Cold War, and realized, wow, this is a compendium I didn't know really existed. And that's where I became fascinated with history. Um, so Tom Holland's bribe is beyond a red flag. This is open mafia style. And remember, they're a street gang. They're not a political movement. They're a street gang. And this is more proof. They'll do any crime if they think they can get away with it. How sad is that? Okay. Not to mention that, look at the criminals that dear leader has pardoned. The biggest drug dealer on the internet who actually worked with the cartels, allegedly dear leader's nemesis, the Mexican cartels, and had murder for hires on his rap sheet. He pardoned him. Blagojevich. I mean, Illinois has got a political corruption problem long term. Yeah, I know that. But Blagojevich was top tier, top quintile corrupt. Pardoned fully without a question. And none of these pardons are being laid down because they served their sentences, they expressed remorse, they did community service and try to redeem themselves, and they did things that would indicate their criminal history is through. None of that happened. Okay. You can't even do what Trump's doing in Texas. Abbott has no authority just to willy-nilly pardon somebody. None. But dear leader's doing it to some of the biggest criminals in the drug trade, biggest criminals in nationalist politics, the 1600 insurrectionists, many of them with felonies up to and including aggravated assault on a peace officer and sedition. Okay. So when he ignores Tom Holland's crimes, holy shit, that shouldn't be a surprise to anybody. But it happened. Okay. Just like when Senator Adam Schiff asked Kash Patel, did you tell Pam Bondi or did the CIA tell you that Trump was in the Epstein list? And all he did was started to argue. Big glaring warning sign. He's in the fucking Epstein list. Because why didn't you say no, Patel? No, he was never in there. No, I was never told that. Instead, he got into an argument with himself and Schiff at the same time and started bloviating like Trump, doing the weave, the dumbest fucking bullshit. But yeah, he just sits there and screams. I'm like, you have a gang of criminals. You have a street gang of criminals running the show now. This is the ultimate problem in America. Okay. And they'll blame anybody else. They will blame anybody else. Okay. Black women, transgenders, immigrants, the poor, anybody but themselves. Who's committing the big crimes right now? Okay. I used to work in the most population dense county of immigration in the United States, California Ag Central. Okay. I can tell you for a fact their entire shtick about immigration and crime is false and purposely so. Okay. Are there criminal elements in the immigrant communities? Of course there are. Okay. But what they talk about, blaming all the crime, and he's explicitly done that. He's blamed, they're committing all the crimes. I'm like, no, it's simply not true. That's not true in Salinas, California. It's not true in Georgia where they grow melons. It's not true in Florida where they grow oranges and grapefruits. It's just simply not fucking true. Okay? This is just racism on your sleeve. This is just and the funny thing is, 100 years ago was the last rise of the Klan, the 1920s. Okay, that was their big heyday. Last big heyday was the 20s. They became a political party in the upper Midwest. They kept dancing around the upper Midwest going, no, 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 we're not that Klan, the Grand Knights of Mississippi. We're different. That's how MAGA sold itself. We're different. Well, then they went up to the Midwest and they took off their facade and they just switched targets. Instead of being mad at black people in Mississippi, they got mad at the Irish, my folks, in the upper Midwest. They even tried to attack the Irish at Notre Dame. I posted the article, the whole historical article about that a little while ago. Okay, they showed up in Notre Dame thinking they can kick the shit out of the Irish because they're subhuman. Yes, if you think it's only about race, you need to read more about the racist movements in America. They're totalitarian movements. Once they get done picking on the people they started bullying first, they will move on to a new target. Okay? The Klan in this country has declared Irish, Italians, Greeks, and Turks all non-whites and just as bad as black folks. Yeah, that's real. Okay? So, you know, this is just Klan exactly 100 years later. This is just the re-rise of the Klan. They took Klan off because we all know what the Klan is, and they replaced it with MAGA. All the philosophies there. Okay. And at the dumb white people, I mean, some of them are figuring out. I'm loving the focus groups recently. Holy shit. Some of the white boys and white girls who used to love Dear Leader are starting to figure this shit out. Okay. They need to talk to their friends and family and really start getting people away from the cult because this is a criminal element out for themselves. And they will do anything, anything to retain power. How do I know this? Hoxha, Albania. All the 20th century dictators. Hoxha. Ceausescu in Romania. Hussein in Iraq. Gaddafi, Libya. Idi Amin, Uganda. Okay. The Marcos, Philippines. Okay. The Nazis, Go I'm going to repeat this a lot. If you watch me or read my writings, you're going to hear me talk about the Monument Men because it's a learning moment. Okay. My father-in-law, the Command Sergeant Major, Airborne Ranger, Green Beret, retired. He and I watched the Monument Men because he loves that movie. Okay. And so do I. Because he was on the teams for 21 years. He has more combat time than 99% of the troops. He knows what it is to be at war. He was there a lot. Um, 3 or 4 tours, and I think it's 3 tours in Vietnam. Fought with the Rangers and with the Green Berets. He can wear the Ranger scroll or the Green Beret lightning bolt arrowhead as his combat patch. He wears his Green Beret patch, of course, but yeah, he's authorized to wear both. So he loves that movie, and because he says it was an important duty. He goes, I did something completely different. I blew shit up with the Green Berets, okay, but they had an important duty to protect history and antiquity. Okay. And what that movie shows, and it should show the common person, the layman who watches this in a historical sense, is all authoritarian movements are just thievery rings. That's all they are. Okay. The Ceausescu's, immediately when they took power, the first thing they did was put the whole rest of the country on food rations and started starving people. The Ceausescu's lived in multiple palaces in complete luxury. Okay. All authoritarian movements are just thievery rings. Anybody tries to convince you that authoritarians are looking out for you, they're idiots. That's an idiotic opinion. That's against history. Okay. What they're doing is trying to rip you off. And if they can, rip off as many people, including start ripping off the country itself. Look at the last tax bill. It's literally a robbery of the treasury. It's an attack on the US dollar. Meanwhile, he's made what? I've heard reports from 3.2 to $5 billion on $ Trump and $Millennia. And remember, the $Millennia, the ledger keys at the bottom of that chain are the same keys in $Libra that President Mealy, that crook in Argentina, set up, and then they rug pulled that. I'm saying Mealy rug pulled it. The people at the bottom of the registers are the one that did the rug pull. CoffeeZilla on YouTube has an hour-long video. We'll explain the whole scheme to you. Yeah, same crew set up the White House regime's meme coins. So if you think this is anything but a theft ring by violence, you would be wrong. And history proves that. Okay. Number 3, let's talk boycotts. And let's be real about them. Okay. I did some data research today because Professor Galloway, really smart guy, I've been watching him and Kara and some of the guests kind of frequently lately because they're speaking a lot of good truths and a lot of good data. And he said a little factoid, which I immediately had to verify. But yeah, it turns out 3.3% of the population, the top 3.3% of the population equates to 25% of all spending in the United States. Okay. Don't kill the messenger, please. I'll offer you something in this piece, but don't kill the messenger. Don't get mad at me. Your boycott on Substack, Blue Sky, Reddit doesn't mean anything. Unless you can get the top 3.3. If you go to top 5, then you're talking about almost 33% of the spending. Unless you get the top of the economy to defund the autocracy that's being built, we, the working class, do not have a prayer. Okay. Our only other alternative, which I'm not saying is a bad idea because the new democracies in Eastern Europe did this in the 90s and the early aughts, general strikes. Okay. I remember what was it? Was it Hungary? I think it was. They wanted to tax the internet services when the new constitution said you can't do that. The citizens took every bridge in every city and refused to leave until their legislators got off their damn corrupt high horse and took that part of the bill out. They were there for a freaking week. Okay. Um, America needs to stop being lazy and get off the fucking couch. Okay. Let me go back a step here. I saw a meme today that listed out 40 of the top companies in America. Okay. AT&T, Macy's. We have to boycott them all. And not that I thought about canceling my Hulu and Disney, but not just about the bullshit with Disney cancel. I'm not even a fan of Kimmel. I'm pissed about Kimmel. Okay. I never watch his show. Okay. But I did watch Johnny Carson. Okay. I remember when Johnny Carson took $1 million of his own money and put it as a friend of the court brief at Supreme Court when Jerry Falwell, the televangelist, tried to outlaw comedy in the 80s. He did. Okay. He sued Hustler magazine over a cartoon and tried to literally make comedy a tort threat. Okay. Um, I've thought about canceling my Hulu because it's just turned into cable TV all over again. I hated cable TV. That's why I went to satellite. Satellite became direct TV. Now your streaming services are becoming cable. Overpriced, too many commercials, censorship. Okay. One of the things I don't like about Disney Plus is you can't see some of the movies because people get offended. I don't give a fuck if you're offended. Stop censoring shit. I don't care if you put a little warning that says, hey, this is old stuff and it may not, adhere to today's, ideas and ethics, you know, take it as you will. I'm fine with that. But Disney Plus has literally taken movies off and censored other movies. Okay. And that's pissed me off. Okay. I do not believe in censorship. Okay. I think Charlie Kirk was an asshole, a Nazi asshole. Okay. A paid astroturf gadfly asshole. I never once asked for the government to shut him up. That's our job to tell him to shut up, not the government's. Okay. So they list out 40 companies we have to boycott. Okay. One, how the fuck am I going to do that? What am I going to do? Sit here and not buy anything? Okay. Our, our only last good grocery chain was on the list. And I'm like, fuck, how do I buy food? I'm supposed to cancel my AT&T fiber connection. I have a business fiber line to my house because this is where I work. Okay. If I decide to boycott AT&T, I'm out of business. I'll slit my own throat. I'm completely out of business. I need remote access to my clients 7 days a week over high speed, guaranteed 24/7 business grade fiber. Okay. Because if I can't get into their systems, I can't fix what's going wrong and I can't examine the data that's coming through the data logging platform. Okay. Stuff I take care of, security, monitoring data. I can't get there. I can't work. I can't bill. Okay. I'll be poor. I'll lose my home. And me canceling my AT&T, what does that matter to AT&T? They'll just raise the prices on the remaining customers. We already see that. We're seeing that in our utility bills now. Oh, there's solar panels who pay less. Everybody's got to pay more. Plus, we need to fine the solar panel users for having solar panels. They're doing it here in California. Okay. It's always about pushing off costs. So you give me a list of 40 companies to boycott. And I'm going, okay, unless I'm going to be a hermit, that's not even remotely possible. Plus, I don't have the purchasing power, even as a, old Bob Seger song, UMC, member of the UMC, upper middle class, I guess. I make good money in the tech industry. It's just I'm not a fucking tech titan. I'm not one of the tech bros who own everything. I'm far away from that. Okay. I still work for a living. Okay. I'm supposed to end my business and stop my feet because Kimmel got fired. Okay. I am mad at Kimmel getting fired, just like I was mad when they took the Smothers Brothers off the air. Okay. Just like when Tipper Gore and the Senate wives wanted to censor all rock and metal music. They literally wanted to take the albums off the fucking shelves. Tipper Gore was the first dear leader when it came to censorship in the modern era. Okay. They literally wanted to ban Van Halen, Prince, Twisted Sister, AC/DC, Wasp. They wanted to literally remove albums from the store. So what are we going to do about the boycott? Okay, we don't have the spending power. Now, when I was working at the big tech companies, yeah, during that short period, that 5 years, those 5 years, I was probably in the top 5%. So cutting back my spending back then, I could have had a bigger impact. But now that I'm working as a consultant and working for myself, I don't make that kind of money anymore. And just mathematically, I can't have the impact that the meme posters think I can have. Besides the fact, I hang myself. I end my own consultancy, which is my lifeline for my family. Okay? So why are we continuing to echo these things of, oh, a boycott will fix everything? Okay. I mean, it made Target mad, sure. And they did see a little stock price and revenue fall, sure. But what policy did it correct? None that I can see. Okay. That's what I'm thinking. Let's go use the example of the new democracies in Eastern Europe, starting with the Czech Republic, who has the best constitution on earth. Go read it. It has things in it ours doesn't have. It should. Um, maybe we stop talking about, and unless Professor G can get the $100 million class, because I think he's worth about $100 million. Um, I'm not even close to that. If he can convince the $100 million net worth crowd to really cut back their spending by 20 or 30% and move their money out of Bank of America and Goldman Sachs and put it overseas, at Lloyd's in Britain, for example, um, that's the only way I think a boycott can work mathematically to impact them enough they'll actually give a shit. Okay. It's not that I'm arguing against like the whole feels behind a boycott. I get it. I get it. I get it. I've been saying for years the only way a working American can vote in this country for real is with a US dollar, where you spend your money. Okay. Like locally, there was this great hole in the wall breakfast place, old school diner. It's been there since the 50s. Bunch of old timers and stuff eat there. And man, they made a damn good breakfast. Okay. Then all of a sudden on the walls, all this right wing shit started. Okay. Stephen asks the Smothers Brothers, that was based upon their anti war statements, right? Not just anti war, but also their civil rights statements. Okay. They were very critical on both. I am one of the biggest fans of comedy, like old school comedy. Dick Gregory, Richard Pryor, early Carlin, um, uh, Lenny Bruce. Lenny Bruce is a king. Okay. Lenny Bruce is actually the mentor to George Carlin, by the way, which is like super cool, right? Um, the outspokenness of the Smothers Brothers, that they're kings in my book, and they were genuinely hilarious. That was one of the funniest comedy duos of all time. They were genuinely funny. Okay, loved them. Flip Wilson, another great comic from that era. Love Flip Wilson. George Carlin used to be the news desk anchor. Saturday Night Live. Lauren Michaels ripped off Saturday Night Live Weekend Update from the Flip Wilson show. Flip Wilson and George Carlin used to do the weekend news or the weekly news on that show, and that's how it ended up on Saturday Night Live. Um, so yeah, the Smothers Brothers are super important for both anti-war and pro-civil rights. Okay, so we got to figure out what we're going to do. We can talk about the bullshit, unless Professor G can convince his peers to do something real. Us in the working class, the next couple of quintiles down, um, we have to think about something bigger and more robust. And I think the general strikes of Eastern Europe may be the only thing that gets their attention. How we actually pull that off, I don't know yet. Wheels are still turning on that one. Um, but it's interesting. The farmers are getting mad because they got screwed with their farm loans, and then they get screwed when China stopped buying all ag because of the tariffs. They may be ones that may be willing to go along with the strike, amazingly. But yeah, that may be happening. Okay, let's go on to the next topic here. Um, the news is crazy about Kirk. It's all propagandized. It's all performative. Um, the blaming everything to one side is ridiculous. It's just like blaming all the crime on immigrants. It's just an immediate falsehood they bring up because they think the rubes will buy it whole, and many of them do. Okay. Um, Many of them are waking up that the immigrants are not the problem because they're losing all their laborers in hotels, restaurant, farms, and elsewhere. And here in California, whole crews aren't showing up to work, and you're seeing it. The supply is down. Things are missing from the shelves already, and we live right next to the fucking farms. Farms only a few miles south of here. Okay, and there, Gilroy is the garlic capital of the world, and there was almost no garlic, fresh garlic in the produce section last time I was at the supermarket. Warning, Dr. Smith. Warning. Okay. So I wanted to bring up about the response to Kirk's murder, and it was a murder. Okay, it wasn't an assassination; it was a murder. It was gang on gang violence. I wrote a whole essay on it. Read it. Okay, every bad school of thought, whether you're talking about terrorism, gangs, or fringe politics, they all require a martyr. They all street gangs. Pour one out for your homie. That's the 80s, 90s version of martyrdom. He died for us. Okay. No, he just died in needless street violence. That's all that happened. Okay. Um, but they need the martyr. Understand that this is almost pre-planned. Okay. This is aligned with Hamas and Hezbollah. In fact, they're martyring so hard right now, even Hezbollah is going, what the hell is going on? Okay. But this is the amalgam that's starting to worry me. I've recommended before reading the book. If you search cleanest race PDF, you can actually get a PDF copy of this short book. It's about North Korea, how North Korea isn't Stalinist. It's actually an amalgamation of one shit show after another. Voodoo, necromancy, necrocracy, gangsterism, goodfellowism, Stalinism, and some homegrown wacky bullshit. Okay. It's not purely Stalinist. Okay. What's going on right now is kind of the same thing. The Trumpianism is just taking in whatever authoritarianism mechanism they can grab a hold to and bring in. Um, Lech Walesa is touring the country. Wonder what he would suggest. He would stand up and stop being cowards. Okay. Lech Walesa did what he did under the threat of death from the communist regime in Poland. Okay. He would definitely tell you to stand up and stop being cowards. Okay. But yeah, this is all Hezbollah speak. This is very, my people, the IRA, not my people, but they were Irish Catholics. Yeah, they lost us when they started. I grew up in New England. I remember in the restaurants and the bars, the Queen dartboards, and one of the bars I went into before I went into the army, there was actually a doormat with the Queen's face on it in an Irish bar. They lost all of us once they started bombing the subways in London. You're killing women and children now, and you're not even going after the soldiers in your alleged war. The IRA had martyrs too. Okay. Anybody who starts martyrdom as a political tool is a fraudulent political movement. Wholly fraudulent. Especially when a gropers are sub-belly, underbelly youth cult in the MAGA sphere. Okay. Um, this is just gang on gang violence. There's no martyrdom here. Okay. There's just none. So if they want to push martyrdom as their big political moment, they should be dismissed in whole. Fortunately, even like the NFL, I wrote an essay when I first got onto Substack about how the sports stadium swindle is out of control. This whole memorializing Kirk in football stadiums and holding the memorial at a big stadium, this is more of the sports stadium swindle. The billionaires are now helping fascists and authoritarians take control of the company because they get sports stadium welfare. And it's not a small amount. Not only did they get the welfare up front, all the liability of operating the stadium falls onto the local munis or the county. It's never the problem of the billionaire who owns the team or the millionaire jocks who play on the field. Okay. It's a big reasons why I don't go to many professional sports games anymore. It's just a corrupt welfare scheme that working class taxpayers have to pay for. And don't give me the argument that, oh, sports stadiums make money for the local cities. They do not. This has been studied 3 times. Okay. Two of the best studies is the Brookings Institute and the Reason Magazine Institute study. Not dime one is made by the munis. All the liabilities get forced on the munis. It's a con. Okay. Now they're doing this with the memorials to Kirk. Just a bigger set of the sports stadiums swindle and welfare for billionaires. Now the billionaires are using their money to turn around and attack America and support a complete whack job, dear leader, in literally declaring war on Americans because he's pissed that what we left Afghanistan. Oh, and that's a sidetrack. Let me just quickly sidetrack this one. I talked to my command sergeant major father-in-law, the Green Beret Airborne Ranger, this week. And not only did he call dear leader a tyrant and a dictator and a fool, and this guy was OG Republican. Okay. He's now an independent and doesn't like these clowns. But I asked him, I said, what are the chances? Remember, he was a command sergeant major. I mean, like he's skiff level planning guy. Okay. I go, what is our chances of being successful taking back Bagram? He just goes, looks at me and goes, 0. And I thought, I was just being a naysayer, smart ass when I was thinking in my head, there's 0 chance they're going to get away with this. Yeah, he said there's 0. He goes, even if you send in 10,000 troops, it's going to be a shit show. Same crap's going to happen all over again. And eventually we're going to pull out again at major losses. And then I asked him, I said, is this just a political move so they can go out and get a bunch of GIs killed? And he goes, yes. Okay. And you're talking 2 NCOs that used to be in the Army, 2 people who loved their time in the Army, who are proud of their time in the Army, and we're looking at this shit show going, none of this shit's going to work. This is all just political bullshit. Okay. And I have to defer to the command sergeant major. I was always a cop. I was never combat arms. Okay. Never claimed to be combat arms. Okay. But I was a cop and an undercover agent. Okay. So I asked the combat arm subject matter expert, Command Sergeant Major Green Beret, and he was telling me there's no chance of this happening. So just be prepared. Um, I 2 more items. 2 are very quick. One I just want to reiterate, and I did write another essay on this, calling a big portion of our political system, Democrats, they're complete surrender monkeys. They got to stop. They got to stand up for something. Okay, Schumer and Jeffrey writing stern memos is not cutting it. Do you really think fascists and authoritarians give a fuck about your memo? No. Not when they're deconstructing the country and getting away with it. Okay. And the polling shows Democrats are not gaining support. Okay. That makes me nervous as hell, even though I'm telling you, be independent, run for local office as an independent, vote independent. Okay. The Democrats are still the only other major party. And there's plenty of people in this country who will only vote Democrat. Okay. That pool of Democrats is shrinking right now. Why? Ask yourself why. Okay. I think it's the lack of courage and the lack of guts to stand up to the real problem in this country. And the real problem in this country is 40 years of corporate socialism now being turned into by dear leader and Prince Ketamine and Zuckerberg and Thiel and the rest of them into a massive accelerationism shit show. Judy asks, Schumer and Jeffries need to be forced out of leadership immediately. Judy, I can't agree with you more. 100%. And kudos for your comment. Okay. I think both of them are useless. This is why I keep saying, um, uh, LBJ was the last strong Democrat. I'm not saying I didn't like Jimmy. I do like Jimmy. I like him as a human being. I read enough history to know his faults in his administration. East Timor. but I love the man as a human being and as a leader, as an elder statesman. Okay, but the last tough Democrat was LBJ. Okay. Speaking of LBJ, this is how I'm going to end today's live session. Let me read you a letter from LBJ. Thank you, Stephen, for your Smothers Brothers question, because it's spot on to my closing, which I had already pre-planned. Thank you. Okay, let me read you this letter. White House, November 9th, 1968. I am very, very grateful for your kind and thoughtful letter. To be genuinely funny at times like this, in times of trouble and uncertainty, is not easy. But you have done it, and we are, and all of us are better for it. It is part of the price of leadership of this great and free nation to be the target of clever satirists. You have given the gift of laughter to our people. May we never grow somber or self important that we fail to appreciate humor in our lives. With best regards, Lyndon B. Johnson. Until next time, please think about it.